listening to the 23 Personnel Podcast, a Texas Tech athletics podcast where food and sports clash at the goal line. Here are your hosts, Spencer and Michael.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to episode of 23 Personnel Podcast. This is your Spencer, joined by Michael. Michael, what's up, man?
I don't know if I'm looking good, but I'm feeling good. That is for sure. I mean, I have a good-looking hat. So it's a one of one. It's a limited edition 23 Personnel hat for those of you who've never seen the video feed. Anyway, what a weekend. Still kind of struggling to grasp my pea brain around Texas Tech's first conference championship appearance since championship games started in the Big 12, much less even in the conversation, having happened only once in the 30-year existence of the Big 12. Any sort of conference title going back to the 50s, to the border conference days, has not been something we've been able to relish or think about, and here we are, one win away. You and I both signed on tonight with "Let's go 1-0." I mean, everything's capitalized the same, copy paste. We're all in this. We're all ready to go 1-0 this week.
If there's ever a week to go 1-0, Michael,
This
one.
It's a big one.
I was listening to the Locked On Texas Tech show on the way home tonight. And something Chris Level said, like, it made my stomach turn, and I had butterflies and like excitement and nervous, and all the thing just like ramped up to 100. And he said, every game from here on out, you're playing for hardware. I was like,
yeah, that's a good position to be in.
I mean, I'd much rather be in this position than not. And then I was looking for pictures to do the YouTube thumbnail. And I was going through all the previous Big 12 iterations of the field and who had participated, and like banners flying of all the teams that have played. And I was like, if they can do it, Michael. But they have not had a team like Texas Tech this year. We've talked about it. The Gauchos have talked about it. Anywhere you look, everybody is just lauding the accomplishments and the one-of-one nature of this team and of this season, of what they've been able to do, which we'll talk about a little bit. We're obviously going to have a recap of West Virginia game briefly. We're going to talk about where we were right and where we were wrong, big picture-wise around the Big 12. Get you a coaching carousel update, because games went final Friday, Saturday, and it was hot and heavy into today. I think it slowed down today. I think Kalani Sitake and Penn State were kind of the last big news that we were kind of hanging on to. There's still a handful of positions that are open. We have a whole list of jobs that were open that have since been filled. Preview, obviously, the Big 12 title game this weekend, including your Red Raiders. I oscillate, which is a weird word to say. I go back and forth very quickly between being supremely excited and gut-wrenchingly nervous about this game.
Oh, sure.
And I think about like what gets me going back and forth is I think about what you did last time to this BYU team and how not much has changed. If anything, both teams are just a little bit stronger than they were. You were stronger in key areas that were concerning. You're healthier. BYU has improved health-wise. They got another crack at it. And in a game you won by 22, you felt like you left a lot of points on the field. I'm sure BYU feels the same way. And like, how is it going to play out again on a neutral site? So I go back and forth with like, this team is really freaking good, and they are. Which we'll talk about it. I saw a prediction for the game being like 24-21. I was like, there's no way BYU scoring 21 points. I was like, that's wild to feel that confident with the history of the Texas Tech defenses. But like, this year is different, man. We'll get into all that in a little bit. Deep breath, one day at a time. We'll get there. All right. Let's step back and talk about West Virginia briefly. I feel like we need to touch on some of the points that we may have missed because we were I was a little scattered with all the things, trying to process all the things that were going on. Texas Tech being the Big 12 title game and finishing 11-1 this season, and just what all that meant. Texas Tech wins 49-0 to finish out the 2025 season, regular season 11-1. Some historical context, Michael. This is your second time to win 11 games. The only time, the only team this year to win 11 games by 20 or more points. You did that by 22. You gave West Virginia their largest home loss since 1891, some 135 years ago, in their first ever college football game. They had not been shut out at home in 25 years. And yes, they are not great this season, but one of the things we had talked about in our preview and things that, we were all noticing going around is that this team had not given up and that they were still being relatively feisty, and they, that was just a characteristic of a Rich Rod team, is they're going to be they're going to be feisty. They're going to fight for it. Not really did you ever see this West Virginia team feel like it was giving up or quitting. May have led to some interesting choices throughout the game and play calling on both sides, but this game was never close. And it wasn't supposed to be, but it was supremely efficient start to finish for the Red Raiders. You finished as a 24.5 point favorite, over under 52.5. You hit the under because you couldn't do it all by yourself. Texas Tech wins 49-0. I had the game 38-13. Michael, you had it at 42-16. I mean, I don't know who gets to claim this one on the winners, but you were closest for Texas Tech. I was closest for West Virginia. We can call it a split, but my goodness, man. What a way to finish out the regular season.
Yeah. This defense, it's finally, and I'm sure someone else has said it, but it's finally clicking, and it's reminding me a little bit of Texas Tech's national championship run in basketball. Just the way that team approached defense and how we got to see it as fans in the tournament. Now, hopefully Texas Tech gets to make such a run that ends even sweeter. And it starts this weekend, of course, going 1-0, but just the chance to see this defense put so many teams in an absolute blender all season, and then to have an offense to back it up. Even when the offense wasn't firing on all cylinders, they were still able to get points on the board. Shout out to the no stone zone. Sorry, we're trying to get that the red zone stuff taken care of. So the no stone zone was invoked. But anyway, I've just it's finally kind of clicking with that, because I felt surreal at the time. I felt like Tech could make a run. They had a really good defense, but they still blew me away how well they handled really good opponents. And we're seeing this right now in conference play, and hopefully we'll get the chance to see that beyond conference play, starting the 19th or 20th of December, or New Year's Eve, or whatever that turns out to be. So anyway, that I've just kind of finally made that correlation of just two historically incredible Texas Tech teams that were dominant defensively, and let's see how far that can get them.
Yeah, you finished the season 5-game win streak going back to Arizona State on October 18th. Then you get right against Oklahoma State on the 25th. Oklahoma State, Kansas State, BYU, UCF. You had a bye weekend there, and then at West Virginia to finish on a 5-game streak there. Texas Tech defensive line named Big 12 Defensive Line of the Week for their 5th time this season in 12 games. And it was well earned, handling the West Virginia rush offense and containing them to 180 total yards, and just an insane performance again. Okay, I want to look at a couple of things I was tracking about this season and give some updates on that now that we've finished the regular season. Every week I touched on it a little bit. I had graphs in the notes so I kind of look at it and keep an eye on it. But I just wanted to share, now that the season's over, how Texas Tech defensive possessions end this season, Michael. And I know we talked about it early on when I started it, but I was tracking punts, and of punts, how many of those were 3 and outs? How many times did a defensive possession end on a turnover? How many times did a possession end in a score? And then I also included end of half just to make sure that all scenarios were captured. End of half was the least likely outcome of a defensive possession at only 3%. I think it was once. I think you had one defensive possession end with the half. Michael, you forced a punt from your opponent on more than 51% of all possessions this season.
That'll work.
So 5 times out of 10, or when you, I guess you average between, 12 and 14 possessions a game, you were forcing 5 and 6 punts. Now, I also tracked 3 and outs, and you got a 3 and out on 29% of possessions, and that's not 29% of punts. That's 29% of the time that the defense took the field. They were only on the field for 3 plays. Almost 1 out of every 3 drives they were on the field, they defended for three plays and put the punt team back out there. It's crazy. What's even higher than that, Michael, at almost 32%, is how many times you turn the ball over. Or, sorry, you turned the other team over. You forced a turnover. 32%. So you forced a 3 and out at almost 1 and a 3 clip. The other 1 and 3 was forcing a turnover.
Sheesh.
And then you only gave up scores on just over 14% of your possessions. When we talk about in the season giving up 135 total points, 100 or 98 really in Big 12 play, that's not a lot of possessions that end in points, or a lot of possessions that end in scores.
And by scores, you're including field goals, you're including a safety. No, that wouldn't work. That's an offensive possession. You're including okay, got it. So that's not touchdowns only.
Yeah, no, that's any except for the safety, because that was an offensive possession, as you mentioned. Yeah, field goals and touchdowns or whatever, that was included in there. So
only 14% of the time that a team started a drive did it end in points.
Yeah, which is a little bit greater than 1 in 8.
Yeah. Okay.
So again, if you're facing let's say 16 drives a game, which is a lot of drives, you're averaging giving up 2 scores, 2 drives that end in points, or a little bit more than that. So college football's most efficient teams. This was updated through week 14. This is opponent adjusted EPA, which is expected points added. I don't know if anybody has seen the graphic. I'm going to try to explain it. Texas Tech is the furthest on the right of this. So if you're looking at the x-axis, it's the strength of the defense, or EPA on your defense is left and right. EPA of offense is up and down. They are just under the whatever that trend line is, that thirds line, just under the third break point there for the offense, but you are noticeably by yourself on the farthest right on this graph on most efficient defense.
Yeah, and not like Texas Tech is miles apart from them, but the closest teams in order are Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Indiana. So some pretty good defensive company there for sure.
Yeah, and just with the strength of those teams, the 4 of those school logos stand out. You can easily see them. Now, obviously, like Oregon, you can kind of tell, and with where North Texas is so far up on the offensive side, they're all by themselves. But Texas Tech, Ohio State, Indiana, and Oklahoma, they all stand out by themselves, and basically everybody else is clumped up on the graphic so much that it's a little difficult to see logos and pick out where everybody's at. Not those 4 teams. And then going back to the West Virginia game, did we really get beat that bad? The net success rates in week 14, Texas Tech is top, at least quartile. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're 7th from the right. You would expect that in a blowout, but 7th from the right, Texas Tech versus West Virginia, there is net success rate for the game.
Georgia had a negative net success rate and won.
Yeah, and that happens on games that like slogs back and forth, fist fights, and close, hard-fought games. I mean, let's see.
Oh yeah,
Baylor
I think
had a pretty good spread there, but that was a closer game.
I kind of think one of Tech's wins was versus Utah.
It was negative, I think. Yeah,
I think so too. Yeah.
So we talked about this defense, or we were starting to talk about the defense, scoring wise. Why? And I guess we'll just do it by quarter or comparison, or however you want to look at it. I was also tracking this throughout the season, so I have a spreadsheet that has all 12 games, and how Texas Tech scored per quarter, home, away, conference, wins or losses. The losses were pretty easy. It was a 1 of 1 sample size, but your season totals, Michael, you were outscoring opponents 164 points to 13 in the first quarter.
That's something that we were promised with previous regimes. Is off to a fast start. We seldom actually saw it, but this year we have seen it pretty much every single game, very close to every single game.
Yeah. And that trend continued in the second quarter. Well, a little bit slower. You scored 141 points in the second quarter and surrendered 36. So you outscored opponents by more than 100 points in the second quarter all season. Good for a 305 to 49 first half scoring margin across the season. In the third quarter, it's 102 to 21. So your lowest scoring output, but just about tied to your lowest defensive scoring output of this season. 21 points in the third quarter all season. And then fourth quarter, Texas Tech offensively ramps back up 111 points. and giving up 65. It's irritating me, Michael. 35 of those points in the fourth quarter came in non-conference games when your subs hadn't long been put in. I think if your first teamers were in there, that number would be, under what it was, obviously. If you want to look at Big 12 numbers only, or let's talk about the second half, you were outscoring opponents 213 to 86 to get you to the 518 points that you scored in the season versus the 135 points that you surrendered. And I can't do that math. What is that? 360 something scoring difference on the season?
Yeah, I didn't know what your math was.
383. You were
Pretty
plus
good.
383 on the season. And Big 12 play, it came back a little bit. Your 13 points given up were all in Big 12 play. You scored 106 points in conference games. So you're outscoring opponents on 106 to 13. Second quarter, 76 to 36 advantage. So your first half, you were up 182 to 49. So all of the first half points given up were conference opponents. Well, same for the third quarter. Your non-con was the only place that they scored, and that was in the fourth quarter. Third quarter, 71-21. Fourth quarter, 91-30. So your second half scoring output, again, you were outscoring opponents nearly more than 3-1, 162 to 52, ending your scoring margin 344 to 100 or 98, depending on how you want to categorize the safety there. I don't think it's fair to give those 2 points to the defense when it was an offensive issue, but we're also just talking about 2 points here. But that scoring differential, that scoring margin is plus 244. You led the Big 12 in scoring differential in conference games. Utah was second and a distant second. They were 157. And even that, they were a distant second ahead of BYU, who was third at 87. So there was 70 spots between BYU at 3 and Utah at 2, and almost 100 points between Utah and Texas Tech. And that's in conference play. You finished the regular season first in the Big 12 in scoring offense at 43 points per game. Second in the Big 12 in conference only points per game at 38.2. Utah was first at 39.6. They were blowing out a lot of teams. Remember their schedule, basically after BYU, fairly favorable. And we'll talk about how they did on the season here in just a minute. Texas Tech scoring, we've talked about first in Big 12 in scoring defense at 11.3 points per game. First in Big 12 conference only points per game at 11.1. Gave up 100 points, really 98. BYU was second in the Big 12 in conference only points per game at just about 22 points per game. They gave up almost twice what you did, and 197 total points in Big 12 play. Otherworldly. Anything else you want to talk about with scoring, offense or defense, before we get to the Big 12 schedule?
Not scoring, but I did just kind of want to point out, so a thorn in my side over the last several years, if anybody's been listening for a while, has always been passing defense. And I haven't even bothered to keep up with it this year because I would just kind of track it throughout the year. Texas Tech is allowing 190 yards per game passing, which is good for 27th in the country. And that's ahead of Oklahoma. That's ahead of Miami. You know, there are some good teams that Texas Tech is ahead of. Georgia, that's ahead of Georgia. BYU. Anyway, that's just been something that I felt like we'd seen over the years be really frustrating to have. Even when Tech was able to manage a decent rushing attack, then, you know, they're giving up the 128th worst passing defense in the country. Obviously not the case this year. I just felt like I should throw that out there. I know a lot of it has to do with that front seven, particularly that front four, not even allowing the passing game to get going. But wow, just another stat, just another thing in this historic season that we're all experiencing kind of in real time and trying to process that I found really interesting today. But yeah, it didn't have anything to do with scoring, but I just thought, well, that's as good a place as any to throw it in.
Yeah. Before we get to the looking back on our preseason projections for the entire Big 12, I want to go through some comments real quick. Aaron says, "Look at us. Are we having fun yet?"
Woo.
Yeah, man. Having fun. And it's going to be it's a crazy week. I was telling Samantha, my wife, not that I don't have things to look forward to. That makes me sound like I don't have a fulfilling life or anything. Having this game on Saturday be meaningful for Texas Tech is getting me through this work week.
There you go.
I'm excited. I'm going to the game. I'm going to go. I'm leaving after work on Friday. Going to go spend the night with my mom, pick up my brother. We're going to go to the game together. I haven't seen him in over a year at this point. My mom was asking me what the plans were. I was like, well, we're going to go to the game. We're trying to find a spot to hang out with some Red Raiders before the game. We're going to stay through the Texas Tech trophy presentation. Well, anyways, and then I said, I'll be back, and then it'll be probably late enough in the afternoon. I don't want to drive right back. So I'll probably spend the night and then head back Sunday morning. But yeah, last sunrise, it's hitting me stronger every hour where Tech football is. Man, me and you both, man. I presented in a Texas Tech as an upper level communications class this week. The teacher that invited me, it was her. We met at a PRSA, which is a professional organization lunch back in the spring. And she was in her very first semester teaching in my last term before I graduated. So I was in her first class, and she invited me back to speak in her class. And I was talking to the students about it, just about like how crazy it is, just not related to the class at all. We were kind of done with that bit of it. And I was talking about like, hey, like this is like once in a lifetime stuff. And I'm supremely jealous of you guys being there and having access to it. It's like, I hope y'all are making plans to travel. And the teacher being teacher, like, well, we have finals this weekend. I was like, well, however you work it out. But man, it's just crazy. Old Texas Tech man, 91-44, Wreckham Tech, fight Raiders, fight Raider power, baby. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Aaron comes up to say 18 months ago, we were all wrapping our minds around Tech 52, Abilene Christian 51. Crazy where we are right now. Yeah, man.
That's a good pull.
He also goes, old Texas Tech man comes like UCF, I assume you mean, showed some BYU weaknesses last week. Yeah, there are things that they're gettable. I was listening to the PFF preview show and they talked about how, as good as the BYU offensive line was, they had season worst outputs and the game versus Texas Tech. They're like, well, nothing has changed. Maybe LJ Martin is a little bit healthier and can play, a few more snaps, but I think he finished with like 35 yards. And he's going to have to be a ginormous piece for them to be able to pull off the upset, which we'll get to that preview in a little bit. DPYT says, go Cougs. So just going to read it, but
fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, it should be a great game. For your guys' sake, I'm happy that Kalani Sitake is extended there. It would have been weird from my perspective, him playing or coaching for Penn State. But I absolutely love that he bodied them and said, you know what? No, I've got what I want here. And from the outside looking in, man, it's a supreme fit for him at BYU. I know it's his alma mater and all that kind of stuff, but it would have made everything else even more weird had he taken that job, and the game this weekend would have been weird. Just wouldn't be different. So, all right, let's get to our preseason Big 12 projections. And we looked at the preseason win totals from Vegas, and we gave our own. We actually went game by game. We're not going to go game by game, but we're going to go school by school and how we did versus how the actual team did. And we'll start with the preseason order, how they were picked to finish the conference. Arizona State was first. 8.5 wins was their season line. Michael and I both took the over. We were both wrong. Barely, but we were both wrong. Arizona State finished 8-4. Michael, you actually had them going 10-2 on this season. I had them going 9-3. On our picks, I picked 7 of their 5 games correctly. Michael, you picked 8 of their 12. But we were both wrong there. Arizona State, 8.5 wins. We finished at 8-4. Kansas State was second, 8.5. We both picked the under. I had them at 8-4. You had them at 6-6. You nailed it right on. And we both picked 8 games correctly.
Worth mentioning, Arizona State was ranked number 11 by the AP preseason, and Kansas State was ranked 17.
Yeah.
And we still thought they would hit the under on 8.5.
Yeah. Iowa State ranked 22nd, had 7.5. Michael and I, we were not believers in Iowa State. We both picked the under, right at under, though. I mean, we both had them at 7.5. They ended up going 8-4. So we weren't that far off. Texas Tech ranked 23rd. 8.5 was their win total. We both picked over. Y'all remember I went 12-0. Michael went 10-2. They finished 11-1. We both picked 11 games correctly on the Big 12 schedule, on the Texas Tech schedule. BYU, their win total 6.5. We both took the over. I had them at 7-5. Michael, you had them at 8-4. Obviously, they're at 11-1. Utah was, I think, the biggest disparity between between the two of us, how we picked the games.
Yeah.
8.5 was their preseason win line. I took over. You took under. I had them at 10-2, and that was exactly how they finished. Michael, you had it 5-7. I picked their games perfectly this season. 12-0. Michael, you were 6-6.
Big Utah Ute fan over there. Just really only picked 11-1 versus your beloved Texas Tech Red Raiders, but really have the pulse on the Utah Utes.
I also
have always said this about you.
Texas Tech to go 12-0. So, yeah. Anyways, Kansas 7-5. We both took the under. We were both right. They finished 5-7. So Utah was the only school I picked correctly, 100, like on how I said they would finish versus how they did finish. Michael, you had three schools that you picked. So you had Kansas State, Cincinnati, and UCF. I only had Utah. Okay, sorry, I mentioned that. All right, I hadn't mentioned that, but I was wanting to make sure you understood what those boxes were. Kansas, we had the under 6-6, 7-5. They finished 5-7. Baylor, we were both high on the Bears, 7-5. We both took the over. I had them at 9-3. You had them at 8-4. They finished 5-7. TCU 6.5. We both took the over. We were both correct. I had them at 7-5. You had them at 9-3. They finished 8-4.
Yeah, I thought they were going to be more of a player this year. The TCU and Baylor both, and part of that was because they weren't playing Texas Tech.
Yeah, they weren't the only team that escaped playing Texas Tech and probably had a win added onto their schedule. Just claim that for
Yeah,
Baylor,
we should.
TCU, Iowa State, Arizona, Colorado. Okay. Colorado, they had a preseason 5.5. We were both very suspicious about how they would respond to losing Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. And we were both right. 5.5. We took the under. We both had them going 4-8. They ended up going 3-9. Cincinnati, we were split here at 6.5. I took the under. You took the over. You were right on at 7-5. There for a while, it looked like they were going to hit a lot higher than 7-5. They had a rough stretch there to end their season. Houston, we were also split on at 6.5. I took the over. You took the under. We were still way off. I had them 7-5. You had them 5-7. They finished 9-3.
Yeah,
and they
really
had a shot.
impressed.
Yeah, they had a shot to win 10 or 11 games this year.
Yeah.
Once they got through the Texas Tech game, we looked up at their schedule like, man, they got a really favorable schedule ahead of them. And they struggled with, well, they lost to West Virginia for one. And then lost another one that we thought they probably had a better shot at. West Virginia, 5.5. We had them both in the under. I was looking around preseason. I remember thinking like I had a hard time finding wins on their schedule. I had them going 2-10. You had them at 5-7. They finished 4-8. UCF 5.5. We both took the under. Michael, this was you hit right on 5-7. I have it 4-8. Arizona at 4.5 games. We both took the under. And while we were of the same mind, this team probably the one that was as different than anything else we claimed or that we thought would happen. We both had them going 4-8. They finished 9-3. And then Oklahoma State 4.5. We both took the over. We just figured that Gundy would figure something out because 4.5 felt really low. I had them 5-7. You had them 7-5, and they went 1-11.
Yeah, thought there's no way that's going to happen 2 years in a row, right? There's just no way. Well, there was a way. They found out. I did want to point out. So on our over-unders, if we had actually put units on them, I think I would have won 1 unit and you would have won 2 because you had 10 correct picks and I had 9.
10-6, you went 9-7.
Yeah. So, or something like that. Oh, you would have won 3, I guess.
Yeah. But just so everybody knows, we were closest on Texas Tech. Obviously, we know this team the most. We were just 1 game off collectively, 12-0, 10-2, with 11-1. All right. Before we do the weekly press conference, let's do the look around the rest of the country. We can do the job openings tracker if you want to. You want to do rankings next?
Yeah, well, let's do job openings.
Okay. We had a running list here of the job openings as they happened. I was marking them. I was updating them and marking them in green, and I realized just how many hires were made since we did this. They were all going to be green, so I just left it off. One, obviously today, Texas Tech extends Joey McGuire. That's not a job opening, but very well-deserved extension. 7 years, annual salary will be roughly $7 million. I've not seen the details yet, but supposedly there is going to be a lot of incentives into this one, which I think is fantastic. Also, it's expected that there will be hefty increases for the coordinators, and I very much hope that we're able to maintain Shield Wood, pay that man whatever he wants. I'm not even joking, like pay him like group of 5 head coach type of money to keep him here, and like only basically make it prohibitive for him to leave for anything else besides a Power 5 head coaching position. Mac, I think, you can't ignore him, and I only give one raise. But he took a fairly good unit and improved upon it, but did not have the same turnaround that Shieldwood had. And not just that Shieldwood turned around the defense, because it was really bad last year, but like top 5 in the country defense. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about it for so long. Like, if we could just get a stop, if we could just bring the scoring down to 30 points per game, we're going to be in this thing. Give up 11 points per game.
turned it into not just one of the best defenses in the country and possibly the best defense ever at Texas Tech.
Yeah. So a lot of these, I'm going to tell you, like, make very little sense to me. One, because I don't really even know who they hired. But two is like, that's what? We're going to go mostly alphabetical here. Arkansas hires Ryan Silverfield from Memphis. From what I've seen, he was borderline getting on a warm seat there at Memphis for not doing much with the program that was kind of established and handed to him. But Arkansas got him. I know there were some Red Raiders that were concerned about a potential, at least look from Joey McGuire to Arkansas, but very quiet on the front of Joey McGuire's name being connected with any other jobs or even Leftwich or Shield Wood, which I think goes to show just how committed those guys are to being where they're at. But Ryan Silverfield from Memphis going to Arkansas. Auburn hires Alex Golish from South Florida. I know South Florida was doing really well. It was early in the season, the darling of all the upsets. Apparently, a lot of people love this move. The surprise, I think, so far has been Jim Mora from UConn being hired on at Colorado State. Didn't even know he was still coaching, but he's going back to Colorado. So I say back. He's going to Colorado. That now leaves the UConn job open. Cal is technically still open, but it's very heavily rumored. At least the last I saw it was that it was going to be Tosh Lupoi, the Oregon defensive coordinator. I even think that Dan Lanning gave him like the endorsement, like he would be a great hire for that job. But technically that job is still open, or at least the last I've seen it. Florida is hiring John Sumrall from Tulane. A lot of Florida fans are turning their nose about it, but like they could do worse. Once they missed out on Lane Kiffin, which probably for the best after what happened this weekend. John Sumrall is not a bad guy to grab. Kentucky got Will Stein, the offensive coordinator from Oregon. So Oregon potentially losing both coordinators this season. They fired Mark Stoops, who was making something like $9 million and doing absolutely nothing. LSU wins the Lane Kiffin circus, if you will, leaves Ole Miss, and then was going back and forth trying to see if he could coach them through the playoffs and all that kind of stuff, and supposedly gave his coaching staff ultimatums about joining him on the plane to Baton Rouge and whether or not they'd have jobs. And man, what a circus!
Yeah, what a way to go out. That's just, gosh.
Yeah.
Is it worth it? At what point? What point is the money not worth it?
Yeah, I don't get it. Well, and then really, if you look at what Lane Kiffin's done everywhere he's gone, it's been a cluster every time he's left a job.
Yes, it's never been a gracious exit, and we talked about it, I think, during the instant reaction, just because this was circling the wagons then. I don't think anyone's doubting his abilities. He's turned around this Ole Miss team that had some really good seasons before he got there, but it had been a while, and it was really impressive what he did there. So I think you can have two different conversations. One, he is able to coach a football team and get them to places that they haven't been, but two, he is unable to make a graceful exit without pissing every single person off in his wake.
Yeah. We mentioned with Ryan Silverfield going to Arkansas, the Memphis job is open. Michigan State fired their guy to hire Pat Fitzgerald, who previously had been at Northwestern, but that was back in 2023. He had been let go of that lawsuit about, was it hazing or some kind of weird like harassment?
Yeah. Claim. So he did his time as an analyst somewhere, and now he's got a P5 job again.
Yeah. Cool. North Texas, they are, well, Oklahoma State hires Eric Morris from North Texas. Love that for him. Don't like it for us having to face him. Wish him lots of success, but just not in the games versus Texas Tech. But with that opening, it was rumored, and I think it's been since confirmed. Neil Brown coming back to be a head coach will be the new guy there at North Texas. Ole Miss elevated their defensive coordinator Pete Golding, who was their defensive coordinator. I think a lot of people think this is going to go very, very poorly for them. I think they needed to find somebody with some stability as quickly as they can to steady the ship going into the playoff. For a while there, it looked like they were only going to have a defensive staff, and what the playoff committee was going to do, and what Ole Miss was potentially going to put out there on the field on game day. But it looks like one of their staffers, offensive staff guys, is going to be back to call plays. But yeah, they elevated Pete Golding to be their permanent head coach very quickly after Lane Kiffin left. Oregon State had opened up early in the season, and they went with an assistant from Alabama, Jamarcus Shepard. I don't know anything about him, but just know that a lot of people think that he was this is a really great hire for them, a little out of the box for Oregon State, but everybody seems to really think this is going to be at least a step in the right direction. Penn State is kind of, not ironically, but funny, still open. The one that started this whole thing. Swing and a miss on Matt Rule and probably Kalani Sitake. We assume all that was very serious the last 36 hours or so as of we're recording, and now still left without a head coach. Stanford, it makes sense in context here that Andrew Luck hired another Stanford quarterback and Tavita Pritchard. I never heard of this guy. He was coaching the Washington Commanders quarterbacks, but now he's going to be the head coach at Stanford. That doesn't make a lot of. I don't get it. Tulane is currently open. They're using the same search firm that North Texas is. I'm going to find out who can take on the Green Wave after what Willie Fritz did for them, and then John Sumrall kept them going. We mentioned a few weeks ago, Virginia Tech had hired James Franklin. UCLA is tabbing Bob Chesney from James Madison to be their new head coach. And then USF, again, this was rumored to be targeting Jimbo Fisher to take over for Alex Golish, who's gone on to Auburn. So, wild carousel helping, minimize some of the dominoes that happen when you take a sitting head coach and install him somewhere else. That some of these are being coordinator elevations or assistant coaches, or being pulled from the NFL. But you also still have a handful of jobs that are still open. So this one's not done yet. It did happen fast and furious, basically the last couple of days, but very interesting time to be trying to hire a head coach.
Yeah, I've been out of pocket lately, and especially today. You essentially broke the Eric Morris to Oklahoma State news to me. I had no idea that had happened, and I'm not sure how I feel about it.
Yeah, it was it was a couple days ago, I think. Man, but you've been moving about with.
I've been moving about
with the holiday and all this stuff going on. It feels weird to see a Texas Tech player, former assistant, now going to a Big 12 foe and maybe even rival. And not like, Matt Wells to Kansas State type, but like one of your guys, an Eric Morris a fantastic player. Was on the coaching staff here again under Kingsbury, and was doing, done really well with Incarnate Word. And then they're at North Texas, and then doing well enough to catch the attention of a Power 5 job in Oklahoma State. So good for him. Like I said, I don't love having the thought of having to face him or having to deal with that, but congrats to him.
Agree. And for some reason I can picture him in that, like, the white cap with the orange logo. I mean, I don't know. I think it'll work. I think he'll do a good job there. It just, I don't know. Okay. Rankings. I want to do rankings really quickly. It won't take long. AP, who cares? Text number 5. They moved up from 7. Coaches poll, text number 6. They moved up from 7. This mostly doing with the A&M loss. Okay, let's get to the real thing. So CFP rankings came out tonight. Texas Tech, predictably, I wasn't so sure, but I didn't see how they could, they've already kind of backed themselves into a corner with this. A&M losing shuffled things around considerably in the top 6 or 7. So Texas Tech went from 5 to 4. BYU stayed put, actually, at 11. Utah dropped for no reason, aside from making room for, I think, maybe Vandy and somebody else. I can't remember. Utah dropped from 15 or from 12 to 15. Arizona made their first appearance, I believe. Unranked the week before, hopped in at 18 after taking care of Arizona State to finish the season and clinch Texas Tech's Big 12 title berth. Thank you again. Houston moved up from 23 to 21, and of course Arizona State, previously 25, was knocked out by their crosstown rival almost. Right? Is my geography that far off? They're close enough. They're closer than any Big 12 opponent to Lubbock. So, I mean, that's not a... Anyway. Okay. So, yeah, that's where that landed. So your top 10 round out, of course, with Ohio State, 1, Indiana 2. They play each other this weekend. Wow, incredible. I'm not being sarcastic. I think that's awesome. Georgia 3, Tech 4, Oregon 5, Ole Miss 6, coachless Ole Miss. A guy who went to a team that's 7-5 this year. God bless him. Number 6. Yeah, go ahead.
I know we're kind of done with the coaching stuff. How hollow does that ring that he said he didn't want to go anywhere? Like, it wasn't about money, but he legitimately left a top 5 program, the top 6 program, 11-1 team on the verge of, competing for a spot for a national title, to go to a team that 7-5 missed the playoff. Like, it, Ole Miss would have given you anything you wanted.
Yeah. If it wasn't about money, then... So let me... Okay, we'll get to McGuire's press conference comments later, but this is related. So one of the reporters asked him kind of what he thinks would help fix some of this stuff, this type of stuff, whether, the calendar needs to be adjusted, or, how do you have a college football playoff coach leave before they play a college football playoff game? And he did go on to say, what if the NCAA just keeps treating itself more and more like the NFL these days? What if they start imposing some sort of tampering penalties a la the NFL? And of course, he didn't really elaborate. And so I just came into this cold. I listened to this right before we started recording. So I haven't had the chance to look into what type of tampering penalties or something the NFL has. But he made a couple of suggestions saying that, hey, maybe if your coach leaves a CFP team to join another team, then that destination team now has to sit out the CFP next year, even if they make it. Or if you have a coach leave a CFP team, no one from his staff or team can join him at his new place. And he went on to clarify that, saying that obviously players could enter the portal and they could go other places, but they could not follow the coach. And so I thought, man, that's some pretty strong thoughts on that. Of course, he dropped a couple of times that he wants to die here in Lubbock and everything. So he threw that in there for good measure just to make sure. But I don't know. It's just, it's been interesting to me, how the portal has gotten so much focus over these years, but the coaches just always get a pass. Always. You just rarely, I think you'll see some ire about the Kiffin thing because it's Kiffin and he just kind of draws people off sides, but it's not that common to see, oh, well, obviously Jimbo went to A&M. That's just what you do. That's the thing you take. Good for him. You just don't see that very often. You don't see the clutching of the pearls as you do when a kid decides to transfer from Stanford to Texas Tech or something. So anyway, I thought that was a good place to throw that in there. But yeah, the CFP rankings, Ole Miss at 6, A&M at 7, so they dropped from 3 to 7. OU at 8, Bama at 9, Notre Dame at 10, BYU at 11. And then to make room for Texas and Vanderbilt, that's why Utah got dropped. So Miami's 12, Texas 13, Vanderbilt 14, Utah 15. Texas, the highest ranked 9-3 team in the CFP.
Yeah, and at 13, they're still several spots away because spots 11 and 12 are going to be held out for ACC and Group of 5 champions. You could get a 7-5 Duke there. I guess they would be 8-5 at that point. But Virginia is hanging around. I think they're in the ACC championship game. Ironically, or
they're playing Duke.
Weirdly enough,
they are playing Duke. Yeah,
Virginia and Duke, but not Miami, who's 12th.
Right. They have some weird tiebreaker thing going.
Even though BYU's at 11, you would think that with that spot, they're right there in the cusp. They're actually like first one out from their current spot. That's even before any kind of drop from a potential loss this weekend. Utah dropping back was kind of funny. And then you're going to have Tulane, North Texas, James Madison fighting for one of those spots, coming in from the low to mid 20s there. And then the autoplay video that just got me, I was looking at the bracket. Texas Tech at 4 would be first round bye, and they would play the winner of Oregon versus the 12 seed, which would be likely Tulane, or whoever it would be slotted there. I don't even pretend to know how they were going to shift all that around. And that's assuming you don't move up at all. Ohio State, Indiana, their result, whatever happens there,
they'll swap. Maybe.
I
mean, not maybe. They would have to swap,
well,
or
okay.
there's a chance it would go from 1-2 to 1-3 if Indiana won. I could see, but I just don't see it. I think they're just going to go. Okay, let me play this out. If Ohio State wins and Texas Tech absolutely beats the brakes off BYU, well, actually, that's not going to matter. I could see if Georgia wins and Ohio State wins, then you're going to have 1 Ohio State, 2 Georgia, 3 Indiana, 4 Texas. It's just going to slightly move. But if Indiana wins, I think they'll just swap. I
Yeah.
think you'll have one Indiana, 2 Ohio State.
I think they probably won't want to put Indiana, Ohio State on the 1-4 and have them play again
Agree.
until they would meet for a title appearance, a potential title appearance.
Yeah,
So I think about like they would probably be 1-2 or 1-3.
Yep. Some form of that.
I think the only way Texas Tech moves up is if Georgia loses. And you would move up to 3.
Yep. And if Texas Tech wins, we're stressing,
Sure.
we're trying to stress that
sure.
as much as we can.
Sure. You have to take care of your own business too.
Yes.
All right.
Oh, do you want me to go through? I could go through the press conference real quick. I wrote a lot, but it's not that much.
The last thing before we get to the press conference, the early signing period starts tomorrow, Wednesday. I believe the class has 20 recruits in it. I think McGuire said they're expecting 17 of those guys to enroll early, which would be obviously a significant group of young guys that would be joining the team in January to get you ready for, get on campus for spring ball, and then you'll get your winter transfer class in. The longer this goes, obviously with the portal opening in early January, unlike when it was in December last year, the longer your season goes, the less time that you have like you did last year. I don't think it's going to supremely negatively impact you because I think people want to you want to play for winners, but if you're still in full on game prep, you're not going to be hosting recruits and doing the Las Brisas thing every night. So, just keep that in mind. But the portal opens January 2nd. That would be after the second round of games. So if Texas Tech does remain in top 4, you would have your potential first game would be done before the portal opens, but potentially up to 2 more games yet to play. All right. Had the weekly press conference today, Michael. What do we hear from McGuire?
We heard, so kind of staying on the same topic, he was asked about his high school recruiting strategy this year. He felt like it's a really balanced class, but then he did go to just, they specifically asked him if there was a position group he wanted to address. And he didn't say that there was one he wanted to address, but he went on to say that the offensive line is the most developmental position. And so sounds like that might be who he's looking for. But he went on to say it's more of a balanced class. And then kind of on that same conversation, he was asked if he had any specific number of portal additions that he was looking for. And McGuire went on to clarify, hey, so far no one has said they are entering the portal. So that's always great. And so right now he's looking at 7 currently returning starters on offense, 6 currently returning starters on defense, and possibly 7 to 10 players in the portal is kind of what they're looking for. And I think he said that was basically what they were looking for last year, but then opportunity kept knocking, and so they kept going with it. To go on to a couple other things he said that I just hadn't considered, he just started the press conference. One of his statements was he was looking forward to setting a new attendance record in Arlington at Cowboy Stadium. And I mean, that's possible. I don't know. And I assume he meant for the Big 12 championship game specifically. So yeah, I would imagine that's on the table because Texas Tech fans are going to gobble up every ticket they can find, and BYU fans travel. And Dallas is not hard to get to. No one can say that about the Metroplex. Let's see. he had a comment. He kind of had someone asking him about what has changed offensively or what has changed on Texas Tech's team since settling for 5 field goals hosting BYU. And he said, well, we've turned into one of, if not the best team in the country in red zone touchdowns since that game. So that's something we've obviously been working on, and that's something you and I have pointed out. The other thing that I wanted to mention too, he's working on silent counts this week in case it gets loud there. Like we mentioned, BYU travels. Kind of the way he's preparing for the game is working backwards. He's watching the most recent BYU games and working back to the Tech game, and then going to watch that one last and just try to kind of pick up on what they've done since they've played, but then also look again at the head-to-head, see what he sees there. But the same reporter that asked about him about the state of college football, where he went into the calendar and the coaching stuff that I mentioned earlier, I'll get to the calendar stuff later. She had a really great stat, and it had already been brought up during this press conference about how hard it is to beat the same team twice. And she said since 2000, 35 Power 5 conference titles have been rematches. And of those 35, 22 were sweeps. So the team that won the first game won the second one. And only 13 were, ended 1-1. And so just kind of asked about what it takes to get your team prepped for that. And he really didn't get into X's and O's at all. He said it really thinks it comes down to the maturity of your team, which we've seen this team, battle on the road and in colder elements, even though it was really just one cold game, but a lot of morning games. He was confident about that. The one other thing I wanted to get to. So when he was asked about the state of college football that I've been alluding to, he is proposing some pretty radical changes in the calendar itself. And he said the TV folks would have to get on board with it. But here's what he would do. He would start the season sooner, even sooner than it has been started. I think pretty much where week 0 starts, that's where he'd want week 1 to be. So August 23rd range. And he'd have the conference champions done by Thanksgiving weekend. So, in his world, all the conference championship games would have played, Thursday, Friday, Saturday this past week. And Sunday, they would have had the final CFP ranking show. And it would be set. And then his other one, which to me kind of seems like a no-brainer too, but I don't know how you work it around finals and all that kind of stuff. But just less time between CFP games. He said he remembers, in high school, you're playing playoff games every 7 days. Why can't you do that in college? That
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. But I know what they're doing. They're timing it around historical bowl game times and New Year's Eve and New Year's Day and all that. And he said, well, if you limit the number of days in between the CFP rounds, then you'll play your national championship on January 1st. So you still get to have your New Year's Day game. Then the portal opens on January 2nd like it already does. And there you go. So his solution was basically don't do anything different about the portal necessarily. Consider some sort of tampering penalties for head coaches that leave a CFP team high and dry, but then also just to start the season earlier and compress the playoff, basically, which that all sounds easy in theory, but there are probably so many people making so much money on all this TV stuff that it'll never happen.
Yeah, to my mind, it doesn't make a lot of sense to go 9 days between rounds of the playoffs. Just play them every weekend.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what the thought process is there. If it's because then you're playing in the middle of the week for
because I guess
a couple of the rounds.
Yeah, the second round would be around New Year's, and I think that's why it's like you get that first weekend. I think it's the 19th, 20th, and then you get the 31st first, which is the 9 days, but that's the holiday. And I think you get the weekend after that. So you get back on the weekend, but
No, it's a Thursday, Friday after that. It's 8th, 9th,
well,
which, okay.
and I think
Probably someone who gets paid a lot of money said that's when you'll have the most people at home who can tune into the game is Thursday at 7:30 Eastern and Friday at 7:30 Eastern. That's
also
when you do
a great
that.
time to do it is when you historically play college football games is Saturday night. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It makes too much sense to do it every weekend.
I find it interesting that this entire round of playoff games, there's only one Saturday.
Yeah.
And that's anyway.
All right. Well, before we get to talking any more playoffs, Michael, we got to talk about the Big 12 title game, the Big 12 championship. I have a question for you, though. Is your team in the Big 12 championship game, Michael?
You bet your ass they are. Yes, they are in it.
It's still, man, it's surreal.
First time ever. Let's go.
Saturday morning, 11 a.m. ABC for those tuning in. In Arlington, Texas Tech will take on BYU, 11-1 teams in a rematch. BYU is up to 14th in S&P plus. Texas Tech holding steady at third. The BYU schedule since facing Texas Tech, they've only gone on to win versus TCU 44-13, win versus Cincinnati 26-14, and then their final game of the regular season versus UCF, a 41-21 victory. They have a little bit more than a penalty per game advantage. They commit more than one fewer penalties per game than you do. 67 total penalties on the season for BYU, 83 for Texas Tech. Offensively, still led by Barrett Bachmeier. Nothing's changed. Regular season finished with a just under 65% completion percentage, just about 2,600 passing yards, 14 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. On the ground, if it's a running back, it's LJ Martin. The second guy is nowhere near what he's done. Their second running back. The second leading rusher on the team is quarterback Barrett Bachmeier, 137 carries. LJ Martin's got 217. Bachmeier's got 643 yards. It's 4.7 yards per carry. Martin's got 5.8. They both have 11 rushing touchdowns. When the ball's in the air, it's going to Parker Kingston. 57 receptions, 804 yards, 14 yards per catch, and 5 touchdowns. Chase Roberts, who may have been limited a little bit, but seems to be expected to be a full participant this weekend. 44 catches, 713 yards, 16.2 yards per catch, 5 touchdowns. Tight end Carson Ryan would be their third leading receiver, 35 catches, 472 yards, 13.5 yards per catch, and 3 touchdowns. And then JoJo Phillips, I think, was one of his first games back from an injury was when you first played them. But on the season, 10 receptions, 108 yards. But he is a guy to be aware of. Offensively, they are the 11th best red zone scoring offense. They convert 92% of the red zone opportunities into points. 52 trips into the red zone. 32 of those have gone for touchdowns, including 24 rushing touchdowns. So they get in the red zone, they are going to pound the rock if they get there. Obviously, Texas Tech does really well against defending the run. Defensively for Texas Tech, number 3 scoring defense in the country following the shutout this past weekend, 11.25 points per game. Nationally, number 43 red zone scoring defense, allowing only 81% of trips to convert into points. They've only, however, faced 21 red zone trips on defense. We talked about BYU offensively getting to the red zone 52 times. Texas Tech has only defended 21 red zone trips. Second fewest faced in the country, all behind only Ohio State. Of those 21 red zone trips, they have been 17 scores, 12 touchdowns to 5 field goals. As a unit, Texas Tech has 5th most sacks in the country at 37. 60 quarterback hits, because David Bailey's got 70 hurries by himself. 88 tackles for loss, which is 6th in all of college football. 14 interceptions, 13 forced fumbles, and 19 recovered. Good for 27 turnovers gained on the season, which is good for 2nd in the country, helping Texas Tech be plus 13 in turnover margin. You've allowed 5 explosive runs on the season, which are 20 plus. You gave one more this past week versus West Virginia. It was 29-yard run, but it came with 7:50 left in the fourth quarter. And as you remember, you had subbed out your first team defense long before that. You are still the number 1 rated defense according to stop rate from Max Olson, 84.8%. And then your points per drive adjusted, since it's opponent adjusted, you actually overtook the first place number 1 spot there at 0.87 points per drive. Ohio State is 2nd at 0.91. Indiana at 3rd at 1.0. And then there's a big gap between 3 and 4. Michael talked about the total defensive numbers earlier, but through the air, Texas Tech gives up 190 yards through the air. It's only 5.4 yards per attempt. 6.5 is, at least offensively, that's bad. And you're allowing teams only 5.4. So it's really bad for the offenses. 69 total yards on the ground at 2.3 yards per carry. You're holding teams to less than 30% conversions on third down, 29.7. And again, teams are only scoring 11.3 points per game. BYU offensively puts the ball in the air 220 yards at 7.9 yards per attempt and 195 yards on the ground at 4.9 yards per carry. We'll like to point out to Michael, not that long ago, it was even. I think it was 217 yards in the air, 217 yards on the ground. After you face them, it dropped to 195.
Ooh.
But 4.9 yards per carry, they convert almost 41% of their third downs and score 34 points per game. Again, not much has changed from when you first faced them. You maybe had some of their skill guys rattled. Parker Kingston with the muffed punt, LJ Martin coming back from the injury, and that, or at least was limited maybe. Not shown to be limited in his production in the few weeks since he's played Texas Tech, but also your defense has a lot to do with that too, because you limit everybody that runs the ball against you. Defensively, the Cougars are 20th S&P plus, so they're both 20th on offense, 20th on defense. Texas Tech offense up to number 2 in the country. As a unit, they are 28 team sacks, led by Jack Kelly, who has got 9. And then their other linebacker, Isaiah Glasker, has 3. If you remember, they were very impressive on their pressures and hits and hurries on Baron Morton in their first game. They have 69 total tackles for loss, 16 interceptions, 34 passes defended, and 45 quarterback hits to your 60. But their forced fumbles and fumble recovery numbers are way down from you. At least you can do that. Apples comparison there. They have 5 forced fumbles on the season. Remember, J-Rod's got 7 by himself and 6 fumble recoveries. Their tackling leader is safety. Man, I practiced his name. I did. I get to it. I'm like, I don't want to say it wrong. Falatau Satuala. It's probably butchered. I'm so sorry, man. Safety, he's got 71. And then safety Tanner Wall's got 57. We talked about their scheme being more of why they have 2 safeties leading their tackling. Not that they're bad. I think, their safety, Satuala, plays close to the line of scrimmage. He's number 11. And then their next 2 guys are their linebackers. Isaiah Glasker's got 55 and Jack Kelly's got 52. Offensively, Texas Tech's number 3 in scoring in the country at 43.2 points per game. passing. Baron Morton is completing almost 68% of his passes for just over 2,400 yards, 9.1 yards per attempt, or 13.5 yards per catch, 20 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. If you want to include all of the Texas Tech passing offense, because we talked about Baron Morton's numbers being a little bit limited because of just how few games he's played in, total games, the Texas Tech passing offense, and not just projecting out what Morton would have done, but what Texas Tech has done, 8th nationally at just under 50 yards, 3,547 yards, 8.5 yards per attempt, 31 passing touchdowns, and 14 interceptions. And then I got this little tidbit from offensive coordinator Mac Leftwich. He said Texas Tech has got to be one of the only teams in all of college football to have all rostered quarterbacks complete a pass in a game this season. And went and looked. Only one of them, Holden Phillips, has not thrown a touchdown. You've had 5 quarterbacks complete a pass and 6 players attempt to pass. J-Rod would be the only non-quarterback player. And he is 0 for 1 with a perfectly negative 200 passer
Negative
rating.
200. Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
On the ground, you were led by Cam Dickey, 180 carries, 1,048 yards, 5.8 yards per carry, 13 touchdowns. He adds another 20 through the air at 196 yards and 2 more touchdowns. So total offense for Cam Dickey, 200 touches for 1,250 yards, 15 touchdowns, 6.2 yards every time he touches the ball. Jacoby Williams, 127 carries, good for 725 yards. It's 5.7 yards per carry, 6 touchdowns. Has a few more receptions than Dickey, 29, and he adds 373 yards and 2 more touchdowns. So total 139 touches for Jacoby Williams, 1,098 total yards, 8 touchdowns. And that's good for 7.0 yards every time Jacoby Williams touches the ball. It's ridiculous. Get those two guys the ball. Receiving. No, I say get those guys. It really could just be anybody on the offense. I just don't want to see Baron Morton running the ball. Hand it off to one of your running backs or put the ball in the air to any one of these next receivers I'm going to tell you about, and you're going to be just fine. Caleb Douglas, 53 catches on the year, 823 yards, 15.5 yards per catch, 7 touchdowns. He's really coming on lately and what he's been able to do. Reggie Virgil, 47 catches on the season, 590 yards. It's 12.5 yards per catch, 6 touchdowns, and he's got 2 more rushing on the season. So 8 total touchdowns. Coy Aiken, 44 catches, 560 yards. It's also just over 12.5 yards per catch, 4 touchdowns. Terrence Carter had himself a big reception day this past week. I think he had 10. So he's got up to 43 catches on the season, 530 yards, just under 12.5 yards per catch and 5 touchdowns. So the production between Virgil, Aiken, and Carter is just ridiculous. They are within 4 catches of each other. Carter's got 43, the least of those 3. Virgil's got 47. They're within 60 total yards of each other, 530, 560, 590. And then Aiken's got 4 touchdowns. Carter's got 5. Virgil's got 6, plus the 2 rushing touchdowns. So those 3 guys are just phenomenal. Number 2 option, and it's going to be different game to game who that's going to be. But Jacoby Williams would be your next leading receiver, 29 catches, 373 yards. That's 13 yards per catch and 2 touchdowns. Offensively, through the year, Texas Tech's putting up almost 300 yards at 8.5 yards per attempt, 194 yards on the ground at just under 5 yards per carry. They are converting 51.5% of their third down conversion attempts and scoring 43.2 points per game. Defensively, the Cougars are allowing teams to throw for 206 yards per game at 6.5 yards per attempt, which is really good. 119 yards per game on the ground, which is really good. 3.7 yards per carry. 32% conversion on third down, and teams are scoring just under 18 points per game. But I did want to point out that in Big 12 play, they are giving up just about 22 points per game. Yeah, 21.9 points per game did the Cougars give up in Big 12 play. Michael, the CFB graph matchup has Texas Tech winning this one 28-18. They 66.7% win probability percentage in favor of the Red Raiders. The Big 12, the Las Vegas line has this at Texas Tech minus 13.5, over under 50. Only the Sun Belt Conference Championship game has a bigger line in their conference championship game, and that's James Madison minus 22.5 versus Troy. That's a big number. In the rematch, Michael, how do you see it playing out? What are your keys? What's your prediction? What happens on Saturday?
I think what both teams have, what we mentioned on Saturday and what I heard McGuire mention, and I know that BYU feels the same way. Both teams go back and look at that game and feel like they left points on the table, or however you want to put it. And I think that's true. I think they both have a case for it, but I think all that's going to change is the amount of points scored. I think the result's still going to be the same. Texas Tech won 29-7 with 5 field goals in the mix there. I think it's going to be something more like 38-13 or 38-17. I'm not quite sure where I'm at. I want to give BYU a little bit of a benefit, knowing that they're going back and looking at film, and they're seeing how Texas Tech's defense crushed them, and they're going to try to work around it, and they may get in the end zone a little bit more. But like I said, I think it was after that game, I decided I don't think I'm going to pick Tech to not cover again, unless, there comes a time where the opponent is truly someone that I'm concerned with. I'm not saying I'm not concerned with BYU. I'm just saying we've seen this game. We saw this game almost a month to the day ago by the time they kick off this Saturday. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm at 38-17-ish, and that's Texas Tech has figured some things out. BYU's figured some things out, but I don't know if it's enough to change the outcome. Where are you at?
I think you convert more of your possessions into touchdowns than what you did in Lubbock. I was going to say 38, but I'm going to pull it back just a little bit. I'm going to say Texas Tech 34. No way do I think BYU scores 35 points. So I'm taking Texas Tech to win this one, and it may end up looking fairly easy. I was also going to say like 34-13. Maybe
microphone. Sorry.
You were so excited you're just going to punch it. Bam.
No, I was just like, yeah, that seems right.
Texas Tech is was like 10-1 versus the spread this season. I have a hard time seeing it be closer than 14 points, and maybe that's just my rose-colored glasses and my confidence. Man, it would be a party in AT&T Stadium for the Red Raiders if you end up winning by 21.
You'll be there.
I'm looking back, like we've got the schedule pulled up in front of us, Michael. You gave up 20 points to Kansas State. It was on the road. And in a game that wasn't even really that close, like it was, you gave up an early touchdown, then it kind of settled in. You gave up, okay, let me put it this way. You gave up more than 17 twice. And it was to Kansas State, who scored 20, and Arizona State, who scored 26. No teams scored more than 26 points against you. I don't think they have the dynamic playmakers to make you pay and score more than 26 points. I'm also supremely confident in your ability to move the ball and score more than 26 points. Again, I'm looking at your defensive output. It was in Big 12 play, 10 points, 11 points, 17, 26, 0, 20, 7, 9, 0. I would almost give them benefit of the doubt and say maybe they get to 20, but that feels like a lot of points. So Texas Tech wins, Texas Tech covers. It's one heck of a game. Everybody loves it. I think everybody that wants to see the Big 12 get two teams in the playoff says it's going to have to be a close BYU win. I think that's possible if Baron Morton has a very bad day, or if he doesn't play the entire game. I know it's physically and actually, within the realm of possibility that could happen. I just think with what you've seen Texas Tech do the past few weeks and how you've been playing, I don't see it happening for BYU. So 38, 34, 13.
Okay. You got there.
I got there.
Took you a minute.
Several different times too. I want to believe, there's part of me, Michael, that I know we were really confident against Arizona State because you were a double-digit favorite in that game. And this one's going to have a lot of juice and emotional factor into it as well.
Which I think is going to work in this team's favor. That wouldn't necessarily be an advantage previous teams or coaches even. But for this one, I think it's an advantage. The more at stake, the better. They're ready.
So, yeah, give me Texas Tech to win this one by 21.
They beat West Virginia 49-0 in a game that technically meant nothing, except they wanted that 11th win, and they wanted to prove to the CFP folks and whoever cares about a 49-0 beatdown that this defense is really good and this team is really good. So that gives me a lot of, and it was 11 a.m. in Morgantown. It's freezing.
Mm-hmm.
They beat the brakes off of them. It was over after the third drive. So I think they're going to be ready. They're going to be ready to play a rematch against a team that they feel like they were slighted on, that they didn't play to their full potential, and still beat them soundly. Do you even want to do basketball?
I think we can save it, honestly.
Okay, I'm good with that. I want the one thing I want to mention. Okay, the guys are 6-2. They're number 19 in the AP poll. They moved up from 20. They beat New Orleans and Wyoming. Barely beat Wyoming. But I mainly just want to shout out to the Lady Raiders. 9-0 on the season. Won 2 more games in dominating fashion. 67-42 versus Old Dominion and 67-47 versus North Texas. And we will be in the USA Wednesday night as they take on Wichita State at 6:00. So we're making that game tomorrow. So yeah, I wanted to give them some more props just because I haven't looked into it, but it's probably been a while since they've started 9-0.
Yeah.
especially with wins against 3 Power 5 opponents so far. And with that, I'm good.
Well,
Unless you have more.
The men play Sunday versus LSU there in the Metroplex.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Both teams are off for finals until the following weekend. Lady Raiders play Friday the 12th. Red Raiders play Saturday the 13th.
Oh, I did want to throw out. So LSU, yeah, they're 7-0, but they have played nobody. They have played Tarleton State, New Orleans, Florida International, Alcorn State, Omaha, and Drake, and DePaul. So they face their first Power 5 team Wednesday at 6:15. That's at Boston College before they head to Fort Worth to take on the Red Raiders. So I know nothing about this team. Their common opponent, of course, is New Orleans. Like we mentioned, Tech beat New Orleans 82-50. LSU beat them 93-58. So pretty similar. We'll see. See what happens on Saturday.
Haslametrics has us a projected loss for LSU or win for Texas Tech by 1.7 points. On a
yeah, it's going to be a close one. Yep. I think so too.
And then we got Arkansas after that.
Mm-hmm.
Also on a neutral court, Texas Tech, a 1.1 point favorite. 1.1 point favorite as of tonight. All right. We'll get to basketball. We'll have more time between games following the game this weekend. In Arlington, we'll have the final CFP rankings and bracket reveal Sunday at noon. Figure out where Texas Tech is going or who they're facing or the matchups. But you got a big game first, Saturday at 11. We'll be there. My brother and I will be up the nosebleeds, but we'll be in the building, man, and that's what counts. We'll be watching our Raiders play. It'll be my first game this season, so ain't no curses, but
what a way to attend your first Tech game of the season. I'll just shimmy up to Arlington for the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, man. Okay, so I've seen Tech play in a handful of games in the stadium, and it was all those Baylor games from like 10, 12 years ago. The Seth Dagey and Jakeem Grant games versus like the Seth Russell Baylor Bears. I think the game we went to where like Jakeem Grant had a touchdown, a kickoff return for a touchdown. I think it went to overtime. Yeah, it was before Baylor really got rolling, but they were on their way up. Was it Seth Russell? No, it wasn't Seth Russell. Who was it? Let me see. Baylor quarterback. It was after RG3. Nick Florence. That's who it was. Because it was before Bryce Petty. It's Nick Florence. All right, Michael, you got any questions? Should we wrap up with what we learned?
I'm good with however you want to go.
All right, let's wrap up with what we learned. And the only thing I got is Thanksgiving leftovers we're just about through them, but they're still pretty dang good, man. I had a whole Thanksgiving dinner tonight after work. I actually stopped by the store. We got more of the stovetop stuffing and gravy, so we could like make sure that we had enough of that to go with the other leftovers we had, so we could have a complete plate.
Yeah, that stovetop stuffing. I mean, it does the trick. It does the trick.
It's 10 minutes, mostly just boiling water, then mixing it in and letting it sit while I get other things going. Long enough to sit on the pot, not on the pot. Wow, on the stove while you're reheating all the other leftovers in the microwave and getting that ready. Like I said, the only thing we were missing were some more pie. And man, I cannot sing the praises of that HEB chocolate pecan pie. Anyway, it was so stinking good. I'm typically not a pecan pie guy, but that was so good.
I am a pecan pie guy, and I got sent home with almost a full pie, so I took it to work.
Nice.
And apparently, my coworkers are pecan pie people too, because it was gone quickly. The thing I learned is that I may need to rethink everything I've ever thought about green bean casserole. It's never been my favorite. I had one really good experience several years ago. Went to a friend's house. It's a meal that my wife and I still talk about to this day. We all had small kids at the time, and they just invited us over for dinner, and we're like, great, it'll be. We didn't know what it would be. We just assumed it would be something simple, and yeah, they made homemade chicken fried steak,
Ooh.
and green bean casserole, and I forget what else, but we still talk about that meal, and it was excellent. But my mother-in-law, somehow, after knowing her for 15 years, I'd never had her green bean casserole until this Thanksgiving. And brother, it changed me. Fantastic. And I told her that too. I said, this is by far the best green bean casserole I've ever had in my life. I didn't really know I liked it this much. And so, yeah, I've got a little bit of that in the fridge that I need to top off, because we had Thanksgiving on Saturday, so I've got a little bit more time with my leftovers. But man, I think I owe a lot of my green bean casserole apologies over the years, because I finally had one. That was what everybody told me. Oh, you just haven't had anybody who knows how to make it. Thinking, yeah, sure. Okay. I've just been on this earth for 40 years and had one good experience with it. Well, now I've had two. So we're getting there. We're trending up on green bean casserole over here.
Yeah. So instant reaction plans this weekend, to be determined. Michael's going to be at the soccer fields. I'm going to be there in person. I don't know. I'm probably going to figure out a way to pack up all the stuff and record something. And maybe at my mom's house when I get back after the game. I don't know. We'll figure it out, because we'll have to have something out there recapping that game, because it should be a good one. And then obviously, depending on how late we go out, we may have a CFP bracket to talk about as well. But anything else, Michael, before we call this one good?
I just want to end where we started. Let's go 1-0.
Let's go 1-0.
Yep.
What a week, man. What a week. We'll get there. Texas Tech is in the Big 12 title game. Chance to play for a Big 12 championship. Saturday morning, 11 a.m. ABC, live there in Arlington. It's going to be fantastic, man. We'll catch you on the other side of it. For Michael, I'm Spencer. Catch you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to the 23 Personnel Podcast. Help us out by subscribing, rating the show, and leaving a review. Follow us on Twitter at 23 Personnel, Spencer at Punt Suck, and Michael at Michael_LBK. Be sure to catch the next episode. And until then, guns up and let the tortillas fly.